Abraham Lincoln was instrumental in advancing the cause of equality for African Americans during his presidency. He took several important steps that helped to pave the way for the eventual abolition of slavery and the granting of civil rights to Black Americans. One of Lincoln's most significant actions was the Emancipation Proclamation, which he issued on January 1, 1863. This executive order declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territory were now free. Although the proclamation did not immediately free all slaves, it represented a major step toward the eventual abolition of slavery and helped to inspire African Americans to fight for their own freedom. Lincoln also supported the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which officially abolished slavery throughout the United States. The amendment was passed by Congress in January 1865, just a few months before Lincoln's death. In addition to these concrete actions, Lincoln's speeches and public statements helped to promote the cause of equality for African Americans. Perhaps his most famous speech on this topic is the Gettysburg Address, in which he spoke of a new birth of freedom that would lead to a more equal and just society. Overall, Lincoln's actions and words helped to lay the groundwork for the eventual granting of civil rights to African Americans, although it would take many years and much struggle before true equality was achieved. After being freed, African Americans faced many challenges and obstacles as they worked to build new lives and secure their rights as citizens. Although they were no longer legally enslaved, they still faced significant discrimination and oppression from many quarters. One of the biggest challenges that African Americans faced was finding work and securing economic stability. Many had been forced to work for free under slavery, and now they had to compete in a marketplace that was often hostile to them. They were also denied access to many of the same opportunities as white Americans, including education, housing, and health care. In addition to economic challenges, African Americans faced widespread violence and discrimination. Lynchings, segregation, and other forms of violence were common, and many white Americans continued to view Black Americans as inferior and unworthy of equal treatment. Despite these challenges, African Americans worked tirelessly to secure their rights and build a better future for themselves and their families. They organized political campaigns, established civil rights organizations, and fought for legal protections that would help them to secure their rights as citizens. Over time, these efforts would help to bring about significant progress, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which helped to enshrine equal rights for all Americans into law. The situation of African Americans in the United States today is complex and multifaceted. While significant progress has been made since the abolition of slavery and the civil rights movement of the mid-20th century, many challenges still remain. One of the most pressing issues facing African Americans today is racial inequality. African Americans continue to face significant disparities in areas such as education, income, healthcare, and criminal justice. For example, studies have shown that Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to live in poverty, to be unemployed, and to lack access to quality health care. In addition to these economic disparities, African Americans also face significant challenges in the criminal justice system. Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to be arrested, to be sentenced to longer prison terms, and to be subjected to police brutality and other forms of violence. Despite these challenges, African Americans continue to be active in fighting for their rights and advocating for change. Organizations such as Black Lives Matter and the NAACP continue to work to promote equality and justice for all Americans, regardless of race. Overall, the situation of African Americans in the United States is complex and ongoing. While progress has been made, there is still much work to be done to ensure that all Americans have equal opportunities and protections under the law.